Serious, in the spirit of October, what's the creepiest or most paranormal experience that has happened to you? Recently heard someone whispering to me and laughing from my right. There's a wall to my right side. Creepiest, not that creepy, but it is bad if you're afraid of spiders. It was around midnight. I was laying on bed, and just woke up. Checked my phone, but it was too bright, so I looked to the right from the brightness, and there was a fat, small-legged spider 1 centimeter from my nose. We couldn't catch it with my dad, so I never ever slept in that room. Probably the most paranormal thing that's ever happened to me was the time that I had a nightmare wherein I was someone else living in a wooded area and there was a black bear that mauled me to death. After I woke up, I went about the day, and at some point I saw on the local news that a woman had been mauled to death by a black bear that very morning outside her home. That freaked me out and I'll never forget it. I would keep on going through my garage door, and every time I open it, the door mysteriously shuts with no wind and nobody behind it. It still freaks me out. My experience is probably the most boring one here, and it didn't even happen to myself, but I'll share it anyway. One day my dad was walking by himself to get home one night, and he decided to take a picture. He decided the background of his photo would be the trees, since he was walking next to a forest. He took the picture, and decided to take a look at it. In the picture, you could see a stranger grinning at the camera, his face pale and white, almost not even human-like. His face was hidden against the trees and very close to my dad's. At first, I thought that it might have been a problem with the camera, but as I looked closer the face didn't look anything like my dad. So, that's that. I would try to post the picture, but the phone the photo was taken with is old and broken. Skeptical. Motion sensor lights kept going off, not the backyard, when our only dog was inside, right besides me, and it never picks up the neighbors. I swear I saw something move. We had a lot of cats, and my favorite cat, Max, who had passed away, I think likes to visit me. I had my beanbag in my room, and my living cats and my dog weren't in my room, and I was on TikTok, and I noticed it shift like something was sitting on it. My grandma on my mom's side sometimes organizes my room, just moving stuff, etc. My grandma on my dad's side closes the door when the cat comes in. It's an outside/inside cat, so when it's nice out we let it in the backyard. It always has a way back in. She also likes to sit on the couch where she would always talk me to sleep, and brush my hair. So yeah. Smile. Sometimes, in the house we presently live in, someone/something climbs into bed with me and pulls in close. And it's not my husband, the only other human occupant of the house, nor is it the dog or cat. First time it kind of freaked me out, not so much since. Whatever it may be, it seems harmless. I was little and in my bed facing the wall, when suddenly I heard a really high-pitched voice singing Christmas songs behind me. It couldn't have been a CD player or iPod because I had neither of those things at the time. It's both terrifying and funny to me now, because back then I used to be very scared of Kenny from South Park and Stewie from Family Guy, so my mind immediately jumped to that when I heard it. I was too scared to turn around, so I just kinda went back to sleep. I have to say, going through this post while being all alone at work at 10 p.m. was not the best choice. When I was a child, 10 or 11 years old, a friend of mine who was from a poorer part of town told me he was moving to a house in a nicer part of town. A few weeks later I asked him if he was still moving. He said no and that there was a problem with the house. Years later he told me what the problem was and why his family didn't buy it for a third of its value. He said the house was haunted and a priest had been there performing exorcisms. I still didn't pay much attention, although, as a 16-year-old, if I ever went for a run and I went past the house I'd always feel a bit nervous and I would speed up a little bit. The house was the last house in a row next to a wood. I never saw anything odd. Fast forward 25 years to the present day and I was sitting with a friend watching sports and his girlfriend started to tell me a tale. I was half listening but my ears pricked up a little bit when she went into the detail. Basically her friend had purchased a local house at a knockdown price but had left it after only a week to stay with her mum. One night the lady and her partner went to bed. 10 minutes later they could hear the television on at full volume downstairs. The man got up, turned the television off and went back to bed. 10 more minutes and the same thing happened. He went back downstairs but this time he unplugged it. Just as they were about to go to sleep the same thing happened again. Suspecting someone in the house the man ran down the stairs. Again, the television was on full volume, and plugged back in. A few other things happened that I can't remember but they left and never looked back. I told my friend's girlfriend without her prompting exactly where the house is. To this day I am very nervous about going anywhere near. When I was 9 I was laying in bed on a school night and was about to drift off when I turned over toward my closet. I saw a small girl standing in front of my door and she had short hair and skirt and shirt on, except her skirt seemed to end halfway down like she didn't have feet, and I blinked a few times and she was gone. I had a dream about her that night too and still do sometimes, very spooky. I'm a firm believer in bad energy because of the summer I spent at my grandma's house. My brother and I loved our grandparents and had no notion that there was anything wrong with them. We thought they loved us even more than our own parents. However, I could never shake the uneasy feeling I always had in that house. I just chalked it up to being away from home and in a new place. One summer, the feeling of dread became more intense. The best way I could describe it was that the house was somehow placed in a surreal nightmare. It didn't feel real and I could swear there was this heavy sort of darkness looming over us at all times. I'd constantly look behind me because I was certain someone was there. I couldn't take showers and lost sleep that whole time. And somehow my grandparents didn't seem normal to me anymore. They were the sweetest and still very loving but in the weirdest way seemed so sinister. I later found out that my grandmother practiced Santeria, used a Ouija board to call upon the dead and would routinely curse people she didn't like. More than that, my mom finally told me that her parents abused her whole life and that grandpa was a horrible drunk. Waking to my last night's drunken conquest. Lived in an old house in college and our roommate who did Wicca told us our house was haunted and described and named the ghost. My mom believed she saw ghosts too, so I called her and asked. Not only did she say yes but she called the ghost by the same name. She had only met my roommate once and did T-line her, so it's not like they could have done this together. A week prior I thought I saw a man staring at me in the doorway. The Wicca roommate was constantly standing there in the middle of the night because her cat liked me better than her and would sleep with me and my dog at night, and she would get jealous and try to get the cat to come back with her while I was sleeping. I allowed my denial to assume it was her even though she was short and wide-set and the person I saw was tall and skinny. Once I heard their stories I freaked out. That next week I started noticing the dog and the cat would walk around there or stop and back up when there was nothing there. The Friday after I was at home alone doing dishes and somehow the guard covering the garbage disposal was gone and a fork fell in. I had just finished reaching in to retrieve the fork when the garbage disposal turned on and off by itself. I moved as soon as possible. I was home alone when my father was out on a business trip. I have the habit of turning off any lights I don't need, so besides my own room the house was all dark. I heard a noise when I was sitting at my desk, and being alone in the house, I got up to investigate. When walking towards the stairs, out of the corner of my eye I saw a flow of movement, but no sound, going down the stairs. I said WTF? And ran down the stairs to see WTH it was. I searched the house up and down, checked the doors/windows and found nothing out of the ordinary or anything unlocked that shouldn't have been. In hindsight, since I had just gotten up from the computer, what I saw was probably the after image from the screen being against the dark hallway. Still remember the event though, pretty harrowing at the time. Ooh, not me but my fiance went to Fallsvale Elementary, and he told me a few stories. Like how children would show up at recess to play, then seem to disappear, and once when he went to the bathroom and there was loud banging on the stall door even though there was no one in there. My favorite is when he and his friends visited this old lady every day after school for nearly a year. She was always nice to them, and her house was always kept very clean and tidy. One day, when they were on their way to her house after school, a man stopped them and asked where they were heading, and when they told him, he said that lady was his grandma. She died in a house fire a decade earlier. My now fiancé and his friends went to her house anyway, and found all the furniture old and covered in dust and cobwebs. I woke up to find my grandfather sitting at the edge of my bed, smiling kindly at me, not creepy or anything like that. My grandfather had been dead for several years at that point, but everyone said I was his favorite grandson.